welcome to the Friends of Israel's Jew and Gentile podcast. I am your host, Chris Katulka, and with me is none other than the Jewish sage himself, the one, the only, Mr. Steve Herzig. How are you, sir?
I'm not a sage, Chris.
Why?
Because a 2-year-old beat me out.
What does that mean?
Well, you know of Mensa? Have you ever heard of Mensa?
Yes, I've heard of Mensa.
I was looking and browsing, and the New York Post reports a 2-year-old is the youngest Mensa member. Don't call me a sage. I got a 2-year-old who's got at least 132 IQ. I'm not even triple numbers in my IQ.
Well, listen, hold on a minute. Here we go. Welcome in, everybody. Okay, first of all, before we get to the Mensa, you have to explain what a Mensa is. But before we get to that, I want to say we are on episode 198, Steve. And
they said it wouldn't last.
People are begging it to end.
They are.
Begging it.
They're on their knees praying.
Why do I keep coming back to this? It's torture. But I just want to say it only took us 198 episodes. And the sage himself, the one and only Mr. Steve Herzig here, has actually given us a podcast layout. I am holding up in my hands, after 198 weeks of doing this podcast, we actually have a order of business for the pod. Congratulations, Steve. You are the man.
Well, that's just because I now have time to do it.
I mean, we're talking open podcast, remindless, Bible-centered topics. This is all gold, Jerry, gold.
Well, happy to do it. It was fun, but we open with a Mensa for a 2-year-old. You need a minimum of 132 to get in. And I was reading about this 2-year-old who is already can count to 10 in 15 different languages. This guy's amazing, and he's only 2 years old, Chris.
Well, I'm bringing up the article right now for people to take a look at as we're chatting here. If you're watching on YouTube, the article is right here. Let's see. Yep, there it is, Steve. There's the Mensa. How this gifted boy became...
Look, he's a cute little guy.
That's right. The youngest ever Mensa member at age 2. It's a very unusual accolade.
What is it when he goes to a meeting? First of all, his parents have to drive him there, and he has to be in a child's chair in the back seat of the car.
Do you think he thinks he can get out of it? Why am I sitting here? My IQ?
I don't know. He just say, "Oh man, this is amazing."
At just 2 years old and 182 days, Joseph Harris Bertil is the youngest ever member of Mensa, the exclusive society for people with exceptionally high intelligence quotients. I never heard of a quotient before. Anyway, but Steve...
Hey, you got to have 132 IQ in order to know.
I want to know, what test did they give this kid? What test?
Well, his parents are exceptional as well. They're both university professors. And they noticed things about him. He was speaking, I don't know, at 5 months old. Something, he rolled over at 2 weeks old or something. They just knew that something was different in a good way. About him. And so whatever test they give for a 2-year-old, he passed it.
Joseph's incredible intellect pushed him to surpass the record of the youngest ever Mensa member. Well, congratulations, Joseph. That's fantastic, Steve.
So that was one of the things. And the other reason, I sent you another one. Chris, this one... ChatGPT. We've talked about ChatGPT. We've talked about AI. I wrote an article about AI a number of issues ago. There's the AI Jesus. And now you could talk to AI and ask if you're good looking or not.
Okay, I'm asking right now. I'm going to take a picture.
That's the article.
ChatGPT, am I hot? That's what I want to know, okay? I'm going to take a photo of myself. Oh, nope.
Well, while you're doing that, let me just say, I showed this to my wife, Alice, and the headline is, you can ask ChatGPT if you're hot. And Alice said, why would you? I'm not kidding. She said, why would I ask ChatGPT if I'm hot or cold? Or I said, no, not that. You're not asking if the weather. You're asking if you're good looking or not.
All right, it's coming up. It's actually thinking I think it's trying to come up. Oh, here we go. Okay, here we go. Very nice. I can't make judgments about physical appearance, but I can say you got a strong, confident look going. The beard is bold, the headphones give a cool, focused vibe, and the Patagonia vest suggests you're practical but stylish.
It did see you.
That's right. If you're aiming for a podcast host meets outdoorsman,
Are you serious?
that's right. You're nailing it. We wanted feedback on your overall vibe, style, and or how to enhance your look for specific. It's asking me now, do I want to enhance myself? Okay, but there you go. I'm not necessarily
So
hot.
what question did you ask it?
ChatGPT, am I hot?
Oh, that's it.
And it said, I can't really make a judgment on your appearance.
So
but
it
you
used
got
the camera on your phone?
bada bing right there. Look.
That's in like how many seconds?
Oh, I got it back in. I think it was working its brain for a little bit, because it was trying to figure out a nice way
Like
to say.
a game show. Doo-doo,
Well,
doo-doo.
like when somebody asks you a question and you have to kind of like come up with a more diplomatic answer, so you're like thinking a little bit longer about it, Well, I'm sure ChatGPT just used up $1 million trying to come up with that answer.
Well,
so.
last week we talked about having to be use good manners by saying thank you and how much that costs.
That's exactly. Well, and I'm actually going to do an entire editorial on that, Steve. I'm going to do an editorial on the cost, I think it's several $1 million that it costs for ChatGPT for the company. Every time someone says thank you or please, it has to answer it. And that's
all the electricity it's using up.
right.
All the electricity. Chris, who sponsors this podcast
That's
anyway?
right. FOI Equip is the sponsor of the Jew and Gentile podcast. Hey, we want to thank you so much.
What?
Oh, the Friends of Israel's Jew and Gentile podcast. Thank you, Steve, the Jewish sage. We want to really encourage you to get equipped to love the Jewish people. That's kind of our new tagline, Steve. FOI Equip. It was learning the Bible from a Jewish perspective, which we still do. But that doesn't encompass everything that FOI Equip is now. See, when we started this, FOI Equip was the online classes where you learn the Bible from a Jewish perspective. But now FOI Equip is an umbrella of getting trained and equipped to love the Jewish people. What does that mean? That means you could take our classes online. That means you could join our training program, 9 weeks for free, Bridges, by going to foiequip.org. You'll see a Bridges link on there. And that is a way for people to get trained to love their Jewish neighbor to life, to share the good news of Yeshua, the Messiah, Jesus the Messiah. And so if you want to get trained, because Steve, you and I know every time we speak at a church, someone comes down and they say, I got a question. I've got a Jewish neighbor, Jewish doctor, Jewish lawyer, whatever. Help me. I want to be able to speak confidently about the Lord to them. Well, I always say, that's great. I'm going to give you the answer. Go to Bridges. Or maybe you want to come with us to Israel on our encounter or on our Hesed or Origins trip where you can volunteer in Israel. Or you can volunteer in the U.S. in the Jewish community with us through our Encounter program. We have so many various ways for people to get equipped to love the Jewish people that we want to give it all to you. It's all available by going to foiequip.org. And not only that, Steve, but we are handing out free stickers. Okay?
I love stickers, and so do other people.
All 7 of our listeners have already taken 2 batches of stickers from us. We've given out so many stickers. We want to thank you for taking them. If you want more, please text us at 424-444-1948. Send us your name. I will send you a link. I personally will send you a link. These stickers are ways to show support for Israel and the Jewish people. But Steve, what we're seeing is that it also is not just showing ways to show support for Israel and the Jewish people. It's also opening doors for ministry to share about Jesus.
It creates great conversations. Last week I did talk about, I just returned last week from St. Louis visiting my daughter. My granddaughter graduated high school, but my daughter told me she put her sticker on her water bottle. She goes everywhere with that water bottle. Mahjong games. She goes to school events. And people see that sticker and ask her about, why do you have that? What's it for? Are you Jewish? All those kind of questions, and it creates great conversation.
100%. So if you would like stickers, you can text us at 424-444-1948. If you'd like to learn more ways to get involved with the Friends of Israel, to get equipped to love the Jewish people, go to foiequip.org.
Chris, I know that you're talking about these various programs, but the best place to find out is not on our podcast because we go quickly and, of course, we forget.
Forget.
As soon as we shut it off, we say, we should have said this or that. We actually have an interest meeting, a meeting that's designed For anyone who doesn't know that much about Friends of Israel, about North American Ministries and Equip, and all the different things that fall under that umbrella of Equip, they can come to the interest meeting on June 17th. What time does that start, Chris?
I believe it starts at 7:30. I'm double checking right now to make sure that I have the right information, but I believe it starts at 7. Here we go, right here. Nope, that's not it. We have so many classes and things, Steve. I got to get the right thing. But really, it's June 17th. You'll see it online at FOI Equip, and it's a way for people. It starts at 7:30. You can register, and this is a great way for you to kind of go, I'm interested in this Bridges, but I want more information, or I want more information about Encounter, or going to Israel with FOI. We want to provide you with all that information.
We actually bring people who've participated in some of the programs we have who we're not paying a dime. Because everything's free,
yes,
including people we asked to talk about Friends of Israel. It's free. But it does give in-depth information about each of the programs.
And just FYI, Laura Coleman is listening to us on the other side of the wall, and she said 7:30 Eastern time. So thank you, Laura. Really appreciate that.
There you go. Thank you. Well, before the 17th, we have a Moody man.
That's right. We've got
a Moody man.
That's right. We've got Finding Messiah in Unexpected Places with Dr. Michael Rydelnik starting June 5th. This is a class that you can register for right now by going to foiequip.org. Steve, we have the other day I was in California, okay,
yep. Mm-hmm.
and I ran into Karen Sanborn and Lauren Sanborn. They are listeners of the podcast. Great. They are on the Tikva team. They've done Bridges, but they
live in Redding, right?
Redding,
100
California.
degrees, by the way. Heat waves coming in, 109 degrees.
Take me there right now. I'm ready for that. So look if you're watching on YouTube, I've got our Yalmukah, which came from Karen and Lauren Sanborn. And so, but we're talking about
made with love.
That's the Yalmukah.
That's what it says.
So I got my Yalmukah on. But Steve, the reason why I'm putting my Yalmukah on is because we're going to talk about kind of the idea of head coverings in Judaism. Where did that come from? The Hamsa hand, other aspects as well. Kind of seeing where these traditions that identify Jewish people today. This is when you see this on somebody's head.
Well, not the specific
not this Yalmukah. That's right, not this one.
Something that looks more like this or like this.
That's right. If you're looking online, just a normal Yalmukah, you know right away you're talking to somebody who adheres to Judaism, who's Jewish. So it's become an identifying marker. But Steve, you've done a deep dive into kind of studying where this all came from. Is it biblical? And could you give us some insight into all of that?
Well, in the New Testament, Christians, obviously, Jewish people don't read the New Testament. Christians are supposed to read the New Testament. And Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 11, he said, "For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but woman is the glory of man." And so he said a woman should have her head covered. And so I grew up believing, the Jewish men, we wear yarmulkes, but the Gentiles don't. They think it's bad. They command their people, don't do as the Jewish people do. We men should they shouldn't wear a hat. And Chris, when I was growing up, we don't see it much more, but when you were in a public building, city hall, police station, you were supposed to take your hat off.
Oh, yeah.
If you're Jewish and practicing, they understood that. But the typical societal mannerly thing to do, you take your hat off. In schools, if
chewing gum and hats, you out of the mouth, off of your head.
That's right. But the question is, and this is what I wanted to discuss with you, is Paul's commandment or Paul's suggestion here to Christian men, was that a direct attack against Jewish men? That's the question. And I've been asked that question several times. And at the time that Paul wrote, Jewish men didn't have their head covered.
That's right.
That wasn't a command. And he's certainly not commanding
It's not a biblical command.
It's not in the Bible, except for one group of people, The priests.
That's right.
The priests were supposed to, and they didn't wear yarmulkes. Actually, the original priestly hat is more like what we would call a mitre. It's more like
Turban.
A turban, or a kind of like what the Pope wears. Now, there's similarities. However, so that means that the yarmulke came after Paul.
So you're saying the high priest could come from Chicago?
Who knows?
You never know.
But we really need to try to understand why Jewish people wear the yarmulke, what's the purpose, and even though they think that it's part of the Bible, it's really not. We're not condemning it. We're just saying the yarmulke came much later. And the yarmulke is...
It's interesting that you say that, too, because what goes to my mind is they're identifying features, So I don't know if this is a one-to-one connection, but it makes me think, it's not biblical that a Jewish person has to wear a yarmulke, but it does mark them as being Jewish.
And that's one of the purposes. There's a few purposes. I always taught and did in my book that the yarmulke is a sign of humility. The rabbis actually met about this, and they discussed the idea of husbands lording power over their wives during this Talmudic period after the temple was destroyed and up until 600 or 700 AD. But the idea was humility, that, yes, you're in charge. You're the big macher in your family. A man gets married. He's over his kids. He's over his wife. But some of them were taking it too seriously. And so the idea is it's simply a reminder that you're under the final authority of the living God.
Which there's nothing against that if it reminds you.
Nothing at all. That's a great thing. The other thing is real clear, and you brought it up. It sets us apart, which is a biblical principle. The idea of being set apart by God, God set the Jewish people apart. So it's used as a symbol to say, hey, we're a set apart people. We cover our head. We acknowledge we're always under the authority of God. I'm only saying that I grew up thinking if you didn't wear a yarmulke, you were breaking the law.
Yeah.
In fact, when you dropped a yarmulke on the floor, we kissed it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, 100%. If you went into my synagogue, and some people who were members of the synagogue didn't wear a yarmulke, but guess what they had at the entryway? A box of yarmulkes. You could not get into the building. You could take a couple steps, but there was a big box. The moment you walked in, if you didn't have a head covering, you took out and got one of these.
Yeah.
Even the colors are interesting. I looked to see if you could see the different materials are even laid out to identify what kind of Jewish person you are.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A suede is often worn by modern Orthodox and conservative and Reform Jewish men. Tefillin, I never heard of tefillin.
What is that?
It's polyester. It's a kind of polyester. That's yeshiva Hasidic Jews like that. Black velvet, satin, knitting or crocheting your own. I've seen all these, by the way. Leather, very common amongst conservative and Reform communities. Color-coded, the Chabad Lubavitch sect have specific colors. So when they're walking around by 770, that's a blue one, they belong to them. Oh, that's a red one, they belong to them. So the yarmulkes become an identifying feature that sets them apart.
It's interesting because this does have, it seems like, origins that go back to the Apostle Paul, who's telling them the opposite, of course. And remember, he grew up in a Pharisaic upbringing. He was trained by Gamaliel. He was in the Pharisaic world, and clearly he's telling them to do the opposite. And I've been reading through this book that's kind of been talking about the development of rabbinic Judaism from the destruction of the temple to the Mishnah. And it's very fascinating how you had even mentioned here the origins of the hat or the kippah or the covering go back to the temple. And a lot of what was going. Now, remember, Paul was around during the temple. So a lot of what was going on at that time, once the temple was destroyed, those purity laws, those laws of how the temple should function, actually begin to spread out, and make its way into other areas, because the Jewish people are now leaving the center of purity, which is the temple, and now they're all of a sudden they're being forced by Rome to leave and go to Galilee or leave to go to other places. So what happens is, how do we maintain our identity and distinction as Jewish people without a temple? And it really creates an interesting pattern that takes place between the destruction of the temple and the time that even they're writing the Talmud, where Jewish people are trying to identify themselves through how they purify themselves, the foods they eat, what they consider pure foods, or how they approach purity, or even down to the Yalmukah. These things became ways that were spreading out from the temple and going into the synagogue, because the synagogue became the place of worship, not the temple so much because it's gone.
Well, they segue from the Bible as the authority to extra biblical, the Mishnah, the Gemara, the rabbinic writings. And as they moved away from the temple and the Bible-centric aspect, they then segue to a rabbinic one, where today, when we talk to Jewish people, and I was the same way, they don't know specifically where the Bible ends and the Mishnah, Gemara begins, because they blend them together. I've often been told, it says so in the Bible. And they will say something ignorantly unbiblical, but very rabbinic.
Yes.
And they believe that it's part of what the Bible is. And that's why I think it's important for us to talk about it. It's not that we're not respecting Jewish tradition. We want to understand Jewish tradition and try to decipher what's biblical directly from God and what is man-made.
You really, especially when we're talking about these, because next we're going to move to the Hamsa hand, but really, when you think about what Judaism has been through over the last 3,000 years, which is amazing that it still exists today. It's a testament to God's faithfulness. But at the same time, when we read the New Testament, it says that if Christ's resurrection didn't happen, just throw this whole thing away. I mean, it's worthless. The resurrection is the cornerstone to how we have a relationship with the Father. Our forgiveness, our reconciliation, all of these huge doctrinal issues are grounded on the resurrection of Jesus. But the same thing could be said for the temple in Judaism. And so, when the temple all of a sudden is destroyed and a vast majority of your laws and your Torah are built around a system like the temple, and now the temple's gone, you've got to really do a lot of manufacturing to keep this thing moving forward. Not that God was done with Israel and the Jewish people at the destruction of the temple, but it was a part of judgment. But at the same time, this is where rabbis were getting creative on how they would identify their people in a world that was apart from Israel and the temple. That is it is just a huge monumental moment in Jewish history, where that temple is destroyed, and now all of a sudden the Jewish people are forced to rethink, how do we maintain these laws apart from the very anchor that anchors us to these laws, which is the temple.
And Chris, we see, now I'm talking about in America, North America, we see American Jews who are religious, but who are prominent, usually commentators, news people, YouTube influencers, those kinds of things. When they wear a yarmulke, it automatically communicates something.
Yep.
The same thing from an Israeli point of view. Not all Israelis wear yarmulkes. In fact, most do not. But many politicians with Israel in official positions, when they're on Fox or CNN or MSNBC or any of those major outlets, when you see one with a yarmulke, then you say, you don't even have to hear them. They are serious about their Jewishness.
That's right. I've learned over the years being there, because people have told me, he wears kippah. And in Hebrew, it's kippah. In Yiddish, it's yarmulke. So they'd say, he's wearing a kippah. He's observant.
Yep.
He's observant.
It communicates a message right away, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And usually when you go into an observant, like when we would go volunteer at the hospital, and I'd have a friend that was in charge of a department, and he'd wear a yarmulke, kippah, and he'd be observant. He'd also, you go into his office, and he has a Hamsa hand. that's hanging up in his office, and even maybe some pictures of some rabbis that were very influential. And so you wanted to chat about the Hamsa hand. Maybe people have seen this.
And I will segue, but you brought up an important point because this can affect some Christians. Chris, we go to Israel all the time, and we go to the Western Wall. And there's a woman's side. The women and the men are divided. But we try to explain to our male guests who are with us as they approach the wall to stop and pick up a paper yarmulke.
Mm-hmm.
We do that out of respect to the country we're in. We're a guest. And so I think that's important as believers. We read what Paul says. So does that mean we're now being disobedient to God if we put on a yarmulke when we're in a Jewish situation? I would say no, we're not dishonoring. We're trying to be good guests. We're in somebody else's territory. It might be in a Jewish home or at the Western Wall, wherever it is. Doing that, I think, is a graceful thing to do.
Yeah, I've never run into an issue because they leave them out there for you. They're saying, please, like they're inviting you to say, hey, you're welcome to come down. Just honor who we are as a people.
Exactly. But so now you move to the Hamsa hand. And Chris, I'm the son of a woman who had Hamsa hands, plural, all over the place.
Necklace?
No, she never wore a necklace, but my mother was very superstitious. And the Hamsa hand is everywhere in every gift shop you'll go in Israel. And in fact, Chris, interesting that it is superstition, but there's an article in USA Today that says 1/3. Chris, I didn't 1/3 of Americans use tarot cards.
Oh, yeah.
Chris,
It's huge.
1/3.
Yep.
100 million people use tarot cards.
That's, I was even listening to somebody talk the other day, and they said, I really can't do that because I need to talk to my fortune teller or whatever they're called, with the tarot card. Like, they can't make decisions apart from the person who's managing the tarot cards, whatever it's called, a fortune teller or whatever. I don't know if that's the technical term for it.
Well, that's actually interesting because Deuteronomy 18 addresses this issue. What does the Bible say about tarot cards? Nothing specific, but listen, in Deuteronomy it says, it lists a variety of practices: divination, soothsaying, interpreting omens, consulting ghosts or spirits as things that are detestable to God. So, Chris, 1/3 of Americans are practicing something that, there's no doubt about it, is detestable to God.
Now, I put up image for everyone to see here on the podcast of a Hamsa hand, Steve. So explain to people when they see this.
This is not Spock, by the way.
Yeah,
Live long and prosper.
No, this is the idea of warding away those evil spirits.
You see the evil eye? You can see on the screen there's an eye right in the middle. And the idea of this hand is it has some power to keep things good for you.
That's right.
It's like a shield that will protect you, which is it's so opposite of what the Bible teaches about God.
Well, you know what's interesting is that the premise of this goes back to Deuteronomy 28, Steve, where God says, choose life. Deuteronomy 28 through 32. He's telling them choose life, not death. But what does that mean? There are in Judaism and in the Bible, there's blessings from God and there's cursings from God. Now, or cursings that come as a result of not obeying and following God. You can read about it in Deuteronomy 28. It's there. If you want to be blessed by God, keep my commands. If you want to see what happens when you don't keep my commands, then guess what? Read Deuteronomy 28. You'll find out what's coming your way. Blessings and cursings. And I know that a lot of the superstition that's kind of been developed over the millennia, that are even in the Zohar, which comes from the 15th century AD, from a town called Tzfat in Israel. Very mystical Judaism.
And by the way, in Tzfat, it's a very artsy place. It's still Looney Tunes.
But the idea with the Hamsa hand, is grounded in the idea of keeping away the cursings, the curse. But they're going about it all wrong. It's this ever-seeing eye that's in the middle of the hand that sees what's going on. You even mentioned last week your mom would go poo-poo, you know?
Yep.
And these traditions with keeping away evil spirits that lead to cursing, because when your whole life is based off of blessing and cursing and blessing, we want a healthy, that's a big thing. We want you to have a healthy new year, in Judaism. That's a big thing, to have health and prosperity. And it's all great. But at the same time, it's built on this foundation of blessing and cursing, but not on a biblical approach to blessing and cursing.
Who's the source? The idea is the source. And false teaching gives anything but the source. And the biblical source, of course, is the living God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These kinds of things, actually, the Hamsa comes out of Mesopotamia. It's traced to a false goddess, Chris. Her name is Lanala and Ishtar. So it comes from a pagan custom that has been embraced by people who are to be. We just talked about putting a yarmulke on. We're separate people. We're not like the pagans. We're not like the Gentiles. And now we have a Jewish practice, which is warding off evil spirits, comes directly from a pagan god. It would be, if it wasn't so tragic, it would be funny, because it's the direct opposite of what God wanted for his chosen people.
100%. To be blessed by following his commands. And this is the opposite of following his commands. It's interesting because it says here that part of the symbolism is that in the Jewish tradition, it's sometimes called the hand of Miriam or the palm of David. Who is it?
I don't know.
Who is it?
I just think it's a riot, because every time I see it, I think of Spock, who in Star Trek, who's Jewish himself, who used the priestly blessing when the priests, and he would do something like this. It's just funny to me.
Okay, so when I walk into my observant leader at the hospital, that when we're volunteering, he's the one overseeing everything. He's got a Yalmukah on, so we know that he's observant. Then I walk into his office. He goes, "Chris, sit down. Let's have a cup of coffee." And he makes this delicious spread called pilpel chuma that he makes himself.
What is it? I've never heard of that.
It's a spicy pepper spread.
It's Middle Eastern.
It's Middle Eastern, and you take it with some butter and you mix it in on your bread. Honestly, it's amazing. I gained 15 pounds just eating bread, drinking coffee. But while you're in there, not only do you see the Hamsa hand on his office, but you see about 3 or 4 different rabbis, images of rabbis. And Steve, some of these rabbis are old rabbis. I mean, you're talking about...
Most of them. All the pictures I've seen. I've never seen a young guy.
No, I'm sorry. I meant to say, ancient. Going back to Maimonides.
Yeah, okay. They're all old. There's no young ones.
Going back to the 12th century AD. Some of them are from the 18th century. Some of them are from the 19th century. But the point is the pictures are worn.
They're all dead.
Tattered. Yeah, they're dead. And so there's this image of a rabbi that's on the walls of this man's office. And sometimes when you walk into synagogues, they're on there as well.
Oh, I've seen pictures of Rebbes. And now we can be more specific. We're talking about a small percentage of the Jewish population, but they lean towards Hasidism. You won't find even modern Orthodox, conservative, Reform. They don't do this kind of thing. But it is, when you go to Israel, in so many of the shops, you will see particularly one Rebbe.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Menachem Schneerson. But listen what it says in Exodus. It says, "You shall not make for yourself the carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is a water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or worship them." And I'm telling you, some of the people, not all of them, who have these pictures actually do. They worship them. They believe there's some inherent power in these people. They venerate them. Mm-hmm. And it's something, at least the scripture is clear to caution against doing that. I've had these cards here for a long time, Chris. I got these
tarot cards.
No, they're not tarot cards. They're I used to collect baseball cards when I was growing up. These are our Jewish heroes from the Bible and otherwise. Anyway,
Otherwise, what does that mean? Oh, these are just, what is this guy? Here we go. Okay. Now, this is cool. Abraham, all these various people.
Yeah, so
biblical.
I bought that from a very ultra-Orthodox person, and I guess the kids collect these cards.
Goliath is here. I don't know if he's a superstar Goliath. He didn't last that long. But no, this is interesting. You know, Steve, though, when you're talking about these images, it's fascinating because, I don't know what goes through the mind of the Jewish person when they see the rabbi in the picture. But at the same time, it does create an image of, you're almost kind of, you're elevating them in status to almost like a holiness in Judaism. And what's fascinating is that when you go through, my mind went back to Leviticus when Nadab and Abihu, who held such high positions. I mean, we're talking, these guys were in line to take over for their father as the high priest, Aaron. And God said, I don't care. You do it wrong. You're going to find my judgment that's going to come on you.
Big time tsuris.
Big time. But it didn't matter. There were no images of Aaron. There were no images of Nadab and Abihu. God let them know, I don't care what position you have. If you disrespect me and you don't follow my commands, you're bupkis. You're done.
Well, the practice that we're talking about says your eyes will watch your teacher. So it's not in all Jewish homes, but it is common amongst very Hasidic Jewish people, and they take it from a rabbinical writing, which is your eyes will watch your teacher. So that's good advice if you're in a classroom and you have a live person who's teaching you. Okay, keep your eye on him. Listen to her or him. But this, they take, oh no, we're talking about any teacher. Never take your eyes off them. I guess even if they're long gone, have an image of them. It's just interesting.
Yeah. So these are just some components, Steve, that you wanted to highlight to talk about the identity of Jewish people, kind of the practices that have developed, because I think that's what's most important to understand is that a lot of what you see in rabbinic Judaism today doesn't go back to what the scriptures teach. It's a development that's taken place over thousands of years. I mean, we could even say the same about the Passover Seder. The Passover Seder, the original elements of the Passover Seder were the bone or the lamb, the unleavened bread, and the horseradish or the bitter herbs. Thank you. But when you go to Jesus' day, there's wine. Now all of a sudden there's wine involved. Then you
got 4 cups. You got 4 cups.
4 cups, and then you move through history, and now all of a sudden we've got an egg, and we've got haroset, and we've got
even the egg. I'm really glad you brought that up. Isn't it interesting? I found it interesting. Wait a minute. At Easter time, Resurrection Day, there's many Christians and Gentiles who are Christianized who have egg hunts, and they paint the eggs, and they do all kinds of things with eggs, and it's both at Passover and Easter. Chris, neither one is inherent in the New Testament text, which talks about the resurrection, or Passover in Exodus, yet there they are. How is that? It actually comes from a pagan custom of resurrection.
100%.
So it's just interesting how these are incorporated and embraced. And I'm not trying to remove family traditions and things that are fun. As long as we understand that these things were added and they're not law. They're not God's law.
It's not evil. In and of itself, it's not evil. But if you think it's what makes you, if you think this is what
divination
gives
you, is when we're talking about
divination, the Hamsa hand, Hamsa hand. Sorry,
you have to. I think that raises a good point. I think each thing that comes up when you find out, wait a minute, this isn't from the Bible. That doesn't mean you have to. Well then forget about it. You can't do it. Wait a minute. It could be a tradition that's not harmful, hurtful in any way. A Yalmukah is not hurtful in any way. A Hamsa hand by itself, I wouldn't want one, but I've been in homes that did. If you're practicing divination, that's really bad.
Yeah.
But a picture of a respected person, no problem. Worshiping them, big problem.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be discerning, and the Bible-believing Christian has the advantage. Why? Because the Spirit of God lives in them, and he can help them discern what is crazy and not crazy. And Chris, there are times we're in situations where you get bad vibes. I don't know how.
Oh, yeah.
You just say, this is not good. I'll tell you a story. When I was overseeing Canada, I brought Alice with me, and the ladies at the Toronto office took her down to Toronto, and she bought a sweater. But the place that she bought, she loved the sweater. It looked so great. But the lady, the store, the whole thing had for her, she felt very uncomfortable. There was seance kinds of stuff. There was spiritism. There was weird music. Our office people and Alice, they just said, this place is weird. But she ended up buying a very expensive, I might add, sweater. And she bought it. She's telling me about it. She brings it back to the office. But she said, the place was weird. And I just don't feel good about it. We came home. This sweater was, again, not cheap. And she said, I'm convicted. I just don't want any part. I said, let's throw it away. We got to throw it away because you're convicted. That's not her. That's the Spirit of
100%.
God. So you say, you know what? Hey, I've lost more in my life. We're going to throw it away. And that feeling, that knowing where she purchased it and the woman's background and all that, she wanted it as far away from her as possible, which reminds us of the New Testament when the person got saved who was involved with making little idols and all that.
Yeah.
Stop doing it immediately. So I think we have to discern. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's very important to do that. I'm glad you brought that up. That's why when I think about the Yalmukah, I don't think it's an evil thing at all. But at the same time, it's important to know that there's no biblical basis to it. That's really the big difference between biblical Judaism and rabbinic Judaism, is that the biblical Judaism would say, no, this stops with what the scriptures teach, where rabbinic Judaism continues on. It's this continual thought that goes from Moses at Mount Sinai all the way through the Tanaic rabbis, all the way through the Mishnah and the Talmud, and they keep this trajectory going that actually has no biblical basis to it. So, Steve, a couple of days ago, actually last week, Yaron and Sarah Milgram and Yaron, I want to make sure I say his last name right here, Lishinsky, were shot at a event, a Jewish museum. They were just coming out. It would be an event that you and I would go to. I mean, it was in Washington, D.C. It was supporting Israel. And I've been to plenty of those in Washington, D.C. And they were just coming out, the couple that were in a relationship.
He was going to ask her to marry him.
He was going to ask.
He was going to ask her to marry him.
That's right.
And it was going to happen the week after this event took place, and unfortunately, they're not with us.
That's right. They were murdered by a Palestinian protester who, even after he shot them, continued to scream, "This is for Gaza, free Palestine,"
which is something that is said was at least said on college campuses. It's hate speech. We've argued that, and now we've seen what happened.
So something hit me, though, because what's amazing is as the information was coming out the day after they were shot, it was revealed that they were actually Jewish believers, the two of them. Sarah and Yaron were both Jewish believers. Yaron born, I believe, in Germany with a Jewish father and a Christian mother, and actually ended up moving to Israel, served in the IDF, and he worked with the embassy of Israel. He was an emissary of Israel. Same thing, Sarah from Kansas City. I believe she was Jewish as well. And I just kept thinking, these are two Jewish believers, Steve. And what kept going through my mind is we look at this through the lens of anti-Semitism, which is exactly what it was. They were killed for being at a Jewish event supporting Israel. The guy targeted the first people that he saw. But at the same time, they weren't just Jewish. They were also believers in Jesus. And it kept hitting me that this is these are one of ours too. You know, it's horrible enough when it's a Jewish person that is killed, an act of anti-Semitism or attacked or verbally abused. But then you think about the fact that Yaron and Sarah were also believers in Jesus. They were one of ours.
Two different worlds brought together.
And that's what I wanted to communicate was this is an opportunity. Look, the church cannot just sit there and stare at this problem. I mean, we're talking about the fact that there is a unique connection that happens in Jesus when it comes to Jewish people. When a Jewish person is a believer in Jesus, they are fulfilled in that what God had called them to believe in Jesus, the King of Israel. And so ultimately, I looked at this and I said, we have to create. I want to create an editorial that's trying to urge the church to see the value of making sure that we're standing up against anti-Semitism, because now these two worlds are colliding with one another. Yaron was very influential in the church, in the Christian community in Israel, and now he was here in the United States, about to get married to another woman. What's interesting, Steve, is that when you talk to Jewish people about Yaron and Sarah, they go, "Oh, they were great Gentiles." You know, why? Because of their belief in Jesus. Yaron's father, if you want to talk about rabbinics, Yaron's father was Jewish, but not his mother. So that, they could go, "Oh, he's just a Gentile boy," So it's interesting. I want to make sure that people know that they were Jewish believers. That's very important. And as the church, we should be standing up against every act of anti-Semitism. And what we're seeing is how David Bernstein, you had said, is that his name, Steve? David Bernstein.
He made this statement, Chris. I read it and wrote it down. He said, "This is not an isolated incident. It was a world view made flesh."
Yeah.
A world view made flesh. What he's saying is, this doesn't just affect the Jewish community. This world view has Western civilization in the crosshairs.
Well, and when you say worldview, you're talking about anti-Semitism.
Exactly.
You're talking about hating Israel enough to have to, and what's going on between Israel and Gaza, that you hate that enough that you're willing to kill innocent, individuals who are just coming out of an event. That to me, and so what's happening is we're seeing on college campuses this anti-Semitism, the voice of it that's being screamed loud and clear from Harvard and from Yale and from other schools as well. These Ivy League schools is now becoming, and it's been embodied in the fact that this young man went and actually shot Yaron and Sarah.
Yeah, when you study the Holocaust, they didn't care what your belief was. If you had Jewish blood, they were going to get you. And the same thing today. We've said it here at this podcast many times that Israel and the Jewish people are in the front lines, but not far behind them are not just Christians, although we're probably the next ones, and then behind them is Western civilization as we know it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I was just watching the news the other day, and in Seattle they had I think it might have been a pro-life concert where it was they were encouraging pro-life. I think they had Christian speakers come. They had Christian bands playing. Free speech in the middle of Seattle. No big deal.
They got permits. I know about you're right. What's interesting is the Seattle mayor said they shouldn't have been there. They know that that's an LGBTQ area. Well, the response was, this was the only place that the city would give them to have it. They didn't petition them for specifically that area. They just wanted a place to meet. They had a place they wanted, but they got turned down and had to meet in this area. That's aggravating.
Yeah, Seattle mayor blames Christian rally for inspiring violent anarchists who infiltrated counter-protest. Mayor Harrell accused anarchists of infiltrating a counter-protest at the Mayday USA rally and causing violence that led to 23 arrests. So instead of saying, hey, these people have a right to voice their opinion, to worship on this public ground, you know what happens? Christians, you're the problem because you incited this anger by simply just being yourself.
And that's the place the government gave them.
That's exactly right. But that is like exactly what you're saying, Steve, is that here are these two individuals that are just coming out from they weren't agitating anybody. They were at an event. It was an indoor event. It was at a Jewish museum. And what's going on outside? Agitators. And people are looking around, and what do? They blame Israel. Israel is the problem that the murder happened. It's an agitation that's gone global. So anyway, very interesting to show the connection between the anti-Semitism and what's going to ultimately happen is Christians continue to be persecuted, and ultimately the falling apart of the West. That's what we're talking about.
It's definitely.
All right, Steve, we got some more news here. So what else do we have going on?
we're in the tail end of Jewish Heritage Month. Jewish Heritage Month.
Steve, I got to tell you a story. I was driving home the other day through Runnymede, New Jersey, and the town hall of Runnymede, New Jersey has one of those digital signs outside. And I'm driving through, and it said, Happy, Jewish Heritage Month. And then it had a Hanukkah on it, with something for Hanukkah, but it could have been a Star of David, but Zeitgeist, they did a great job promoting.
At least they're out there. This is, in May of 2004 was the 350th anniversary of celebrating Jewish Americans, 350 years ago. And so
That's before America.
That's right. Jewish people were here before it was even a country. And so they had a formal recognition in 2006. And every May it is in honor of that anniversary. Every May is Jewish Heritage Month. And there's a number of groups that really promote Jewish people during this time. I know I went to a minor league baseball game in Trenton a few years ago on Jewish Heritage Month.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's right.
And they did it. The Trenton Thunder did that in honor of the Jewish people. I know the Philadelphia Phillies had a Jewish day as well, and it was in the month of May. But the Library of Congress, National Archives and Records Administration, National Endowment of Humanities, the National Gallery of Art, the National Park Service, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, all formally join in celebrating Jewish Heritage Month.
Hey, Steve, there's a lot of days. So you guys get a whole month. Okay,
we get a month, but nobody knows about it. we do get a month. And by the way,
you didn't even know about your month.
I didn't know about it. But Chris, today, as we're doing the podcast, it's Hamburger Day.
I was gonna say it's Hamburger Day today.
It's Hamburger Day.
At least it's not Pork Day.
Yeah,
at least it's Hamburger Day
it's Hamburger Day.
and Jewish
right.
Awareness
You can't
Month.
have a cheeseburger, but it is Hamburger Day.
All right, Steve. We want to show a quick video of Mike Huckabee, who is the new ambassador to Israel. I brought this up, but sometimes I get so excited, Steve, that I lose my place. So maybe you can help me here.
Well, while you're doing that,
digging this up.
Just tell you that Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, just reached 1 million people. Chris, I've been going to Israel so long that I remember when Jerusalem was 350,000 people. That's a long time ago, and now there's 1 million of them. That is fantastic.
Jerusalem is the largest city in Israel.
It used to be, years ago, it was Tel Aviv, but now it is Jerusalem.
100%. All right, here is the new ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee.
Greetings from Israel's eternal and undivided capital, the holy city of Jerusalem. Beginning this evening is Yom Yerushalayim, also known as Jerusalem Day. The United States is proud to join our close ally Israel in celebrating the 58th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. After 2,000 years of exile, yearning and praying toward Jerusalem, God fulfilled the prayer next year in Jerusalem by restoring the eternal capital of the Jewish people under Israeli sovereignty.
Steve, you think he's making a statement here?
I think he is, and I'm glad he is.
Yep.
You can see the beautiful old city of Jerusalem right behind me. And I would tell you that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, reaffirmed the historic connection of the Jewish people to Jerusalem that goes back over 3,500 years when he had the moral clarity to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's eternal capital, and then moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. On this Jerusalem Day, as thousands of Israeli soldiers are away from their families, courageously fighting terrorists in Gaza, and 58 hostages are still being held captive in the dungeons of Gaza, I want the people of Israel to know that America stands with you. Your fight is our fight. Your enemies are our enemies. Israel's victory is our victory, and together we will prevail, and we will pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Happy Jerusalem Day.
I'm Yisrael Chai.
I'm telling you. You know, it's what he says, you know, you can kind of take advantage of it. But number one, he's saying Jerusalem won't be divided. At least, you know, in the next 4 years, Jerusalem will not be divided. It's the unified capital. Talking about going back to 1967, the Six-Day War, when Israel reunified East Jerusalem with West Jerusalem. When you come to Israel with Steve and I, we will take you down the road that used to divide Jerusalem into two. It was called No Man's Land. And, you know, today that road was once an area where you didn't walk into because the Jordanians would shoot you or the Israelis, you know, would shoot you if you walked into No Man's Land. And so, sure enough, there's a highway now or it's a major artery that connects the east part of Jerusalem with the west part of Jerusalem. That's what he's talking about. There's not going to be a divided Jerusalem. And that's something that's encouraging because I know that's the kind of stuff that gives reassurance to Israelis because this is, I have to be honest, you know, I know we're not Steve, we're not political. I'm not trying to be political. I'm just talking policy here. A lot of times what's happened over the years is that the Palestinians, when they want a state, they basically tell Israelis, well, we want a state and we want these conditions. We want East Jerusalem as a capital. Well, that's not going to happen. They're not going to give East Jerusalem as a capital. Oh, and we want the right of return, which means everybody that's Palestinian that might have lived in certain areas of Israel, they get to go home and they get the keys to their home and they kick the Israelis out and they come in. That is never going to happen. It just won't happen. And so what happens is when you see how the capital was or the embassy of the U.S. was moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, what that does is it says we're not going to play these games anymore.
It was a statement maker. It made a big statement.
But everything was predicated on unrealistic expectations of how a capital or what would happen to Jerusalem. I think for some U.S. dignitaries and politicians, dividing Jerusalem was still an option. And that's the thing is you can't play those games. There could be a Palestinian state one day. I don't know if that will happen, but it can't be predicated on, we want East Jerusalem as a capital. It won't happen. So when you have an ambassador that's coming in and saying, this under my watch, this is not being carved up and chopped up and moved around, you know what? It's a reassuring sign to Israelis as well that they have somebody with some wisdom,
a Yiddish kepi,
and exactly.
In fact, I was going to say, Mike Huckabee. This might be I can't speak for him, but this might be his crowning moment. I know he was governor of Arkansas, and he, he's had a distinguished career at Fox and all that. But I think he's liking.
Oh, yeah.
What he's doing.
Who wouldn't? We were there in Jerusalem when the interim ambassador was there. We could barely get in, remember?
At the King David, and they wouldn't let us in.
They wouldn't.
Who are you?
You're like, I'm here for some hot chocolate.
But you know, Chris, he brought up the 58 hostages, and I think it's important we remember that it's been 600 days, over 600 days since October 7th, and there's 58 alive and or dead hostages that are still there, used as a bargaining chip for Hamas. It's terrorism every day.
Yeah.
Those families that are protesting, I have no ill will for a family member who's extremely upset, making demands on the Israeli government, etc. I understand all that. 600 days. I just know that what other country would endure without literally blowing up the enemy. I mean, blowing them all up in order to get them back. It's a very difficult thing. And we at Friends of Israel do remember the hostages on a regular basis. Every week at our chapel, we pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and we continue to do that.
The question is, how long will the United States allow Israel to continue to attack Gaza? I know there's a plan that doesn't have much Israeli support, but that's to take 75% of Gaza. Right now, I know that Israel is working with a United States agency to give out, to distribute aid, and that created some tsuris the other day in Gaza.
Lots of tsuris because they get hijacked by Hamas.
That's exactly right. Something like 13,000 items or pounds was released, but 1,000 of it Hamas kind of came in and took. But at some point, I was listening to Michael Oren recently, who was a former ambassador as well, and he said concerning the Trump administration, Trump's going to have a timeline too. It's not going to be a free-for-all for Israel and Gaza. He thinks that timeline is coming up where Trump's going to say, we want you to stop it for two reasons. Number one, Iran, and number two, Saudi Arabia. We want Israel to make peace with Saudi Arabia, and we want Iran, an Iran deal to happen. But that can't happen as long as Israel's pummeling Hamas in Gaza. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over time, Steve.
I agree.
All right, next one. Steve, this one was a funny one that, maybe it's not that, it's funny to us, but not to the Orthodox Jewish community.
Not at all. If you're getting tariffed, that's not a good thing.
Trump's trade war imperils Spanish hat makers' business with the U.S. Orthodox Jews. And Steve, we have to highlight here, these aren't cheap hats, so when you see the black hats that the Orthodox Jewish people wear, and I'm guessing if they're coming from Spain, I wonder if I guess they're, I don't know if, are they Sephardic hats or?
I don't know, but I do know that the factory sells 60% of 100,000 hats that are sold each year.
And they're not cheap, Steve. We're talking, some of them can be thousands of dollars.
Anywhere, well, the particular hats that are made in Spain go between $120 and $380.
Okay.
These specific, they're like fedoras with
the rims,
with bigger rims around them.
The ones with almost like
you're talking about the ones that are made of mink or
yes.
what? Yeah, those are in the thousands.
Yes.
This is just the regular hat that you see them. You see the men walking the streets in Mesharim and Orthodox places, or in New York City. Same thing, and they're expensive. And the ones, the Jewish people that live here, they're going to get tariffed.
The high tariffs would be dramatic for the handmade hat factory since it can't afford to reduce prices for its long-term clients in the U.S. to offset the new fee. Our margins are tight, so we expect a decline in demand. It'll be, I don't know if they'll see a decline in demand. I'm sure they're very serious about their
very
wardrobe. When you come on Encounter with us, for our listeners and watchers, when you come to Brooklyn, New York, we'll actually take you to two places. Number one, a wig shop. And you're like, a wig shop? Why a wig shop? Well, Orthodox Jewish women wear wigs over their hair because their hair is only intended, their natural hair is only intended for their husbands to see. But they don't want to put it in a turban or in a covering. They want to show off their hair. So they put a wig over their hair.
And so it's not their hair.
It's not their hair. That's right. And so, but their wig shops are huge. And they're not cheap. I mean, when they'll put one on, you'll get to sit in the chair. It's hilarious. But then there's also the men's shop where you get fitted for your black suit and your hat, and everything is done just, to specifications, and it's very serious. And so we take you into the men's shop as well, so you can kind of see the way that these parts of your life, these hats, are very important. So you can see
the tariff is affecting everybody.
That's right. All right, Steve, I think that's it. Have we covered everything?
Yep, we have, except for the Yiddish word of the day.
All right, Steve, take it away.
Well, we've been talking about the law, specifically the 10 Commandments. And so the Yiddish word of the day is actually a phrase, the 10 Commandments, tsen gibat.
Tsen gibat.
That's it.
Okay, but that's what 10 Commandments mean. But then there's also, who did God give the 10 Commandments to?
He gave it to Moshe Rabbeinu.
Okay, and how did he give it?
Moses the teacher.
And how did he give it to him?
On Delucas.
On Delucas?
On Delucas.
All right, so how would you say the sentence?
I don't have any idea, but we will have tsen gibot, which is the 10 Commandments, given by Moshe Rabbeinu on the Delucas, the tablet.
You are the man. That is our Yiddish word of the day. Say it one more time, Steve, because
Delucas.
Delucas. No, that's for the tablets. What is the 10 Commandments?
Tsen gibot.
Tsen gibot. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for being a part of the Jew and Gentile podcast. Don't forget, you can go to FOI Equip right now to sign up for Dr. Michael Rydelnik, Moody Bible Institute professor.
The Moody Man.
The Moody Man. He's going to come and really share some important things about what it means to recognize and understand finding the Messiah in unexpected places.
He wrote a book, over 400-page book.
Enough said. What that 2-year-old? Could he do that? The Mensa guy. The Mensa guy. He's like a Mensa. Hey, also, don't forget, while you're at FOI Equip, visit us at our Bridges. Sign up for Bridges. We got a class coming up this July. Get trained to equip to love the Jewish people. Hey, we want to thank you so much for being a part of the Friends of Israel's Jew and Gentile podcast, and we'll see you next week.